For all in attendance today, our meeting is being live streamed on the Ncpc website. We do have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. And without objection, we'll proceed with the agenda as has been publicly advertised. Agenda item number 1 is the report of the chairman, and I have no report. And agenda item number 2 is the report of the executive director, Mr. Acosta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few items to bring up. First of all, the Smithsonian Institution has generously offered our commission members a tour of the new African American Museum of History and Culture on Wednesday, November 3rd at 3 p.m. This is a hard hat tour. Ms. Young will be contacting you after today's meeting to assess your availability to participate on this tour. We hope you are able to attend. On Tuesday, October 6th at 6:30 p.m., we will be hosting our first Capital City Conversation with representatives of Ottawa's National Capital Commission, which is our Canadian counterpart. Dr. Mark Christensen, NCC CEO, and Steve Willis, Executive Director of Capital Planning, will share some of their current projects and initiatives. This event will be held at Ncpc, and we invite the public to attend. We also say goodbye to Ncpc's Management Assistant, Rosanna Witzett, who left Ncpc after 15 years of service to the commission. So we wish her all the best. And finally, we welcome Joshua Hawk, who joined the Office of General Counsel as a legal intern, so now we have an office of 2 people. Josh is a third-year law student at Washington and Lee University School of Law in Lexington, Virginia, and he's participating in a Washington semester program sponsored by that university and will be with us through December. So we do welcome Josh to our agency. And that's it for my report.
Any questions for Mr. Acosta? Agenda item number 3 is the legislative update, and General Counsel, Ms. Schuyler.
Nothing to report, sir.
Thank you. I will note that unusually we have no delegated or consent item agendas today, so we'll proceed straight to the open session agenda. And agenda item number 4A is the preliminary and final site and building plans for Phase 1 of the Constitution Gardens Rehabilitation Project, and we welcome Ms. Hirsch.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. The National Park Service, in cooperation with the Trust for the National Mall, has submitted preliminary and final site and building plans for Phase 1 of the Constitution Gardens rehabilitation. This is not, sorry, it's not advancing. Constitution Gardens, as you know, is located between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument on the National Mall. President's Park is also located directly to the northeast. To start, I'll provide a brief history as well as some project background information. Originally, the site of Constitution Gardens was part of the Potomac River, and the site was actually created by dredging. The lockkeeper's house was constructed in the 1830s on the C&O extension. The C&O extension connected the Washington City Canal with the C&O Canal. The primary function of the lockkeeper was to collect tolls and keep records of commerce on the canal. In the early 20th century, the Macmillan Plan, the area was dedicated as parkland, and then shortly thereafter, the Navy actually constructed temporary buildings on the site, which were not torn down until the 1970s. Constitution Gardens, as it is today, was originally developed for the nation's bicentennial and was intended to provide a pastoral setting for recreation and event use. It was designed by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, along with Dan Kiley. A central feature of the park is the lake, which features a curving shoreline. There are also about approximately 2 miles of walkways in the park. In the 1980s, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was added on the west side of the park, and a few years later, the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence was also dedicated. Since opening, the condition of the park has declined and it has not reached achieved the success of a public space along the mall. While there are thousands of trees in the park, they are in varying condition and health. due to poor soil conditions. Due to its physical conditions, Constitution Gardens is also a fairly underutilized part of the mall. In 2010, the Park Service, along with this commission, adopted the National Mall Plan. That plan addressed the entire mall, but also included a vision for Constitution Gardens as a relaxing destination with opportunities for entertainment and recreation. To address many of the deteriorating conditions in Constitution Gardens, in 2012, the Trust for the National Mall, the Park Service's partner, managed a design competition to develop a rehabilitation plan for this area. The winner of that competition was Peter Walker Partners and Rogers Architects, and they've been working on the rehabilitation plan over the last few years. So the current rehabilitation project has been divided into 2 phases and includes most of Constitution Gardens, with the exception of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial at the west end. So you can see the project area is highlighted in red on this image. Last October, the commission provided comments on 3 concept designs for the project, indicating support and also supporting the alternative that combined ecological functions with socially vibrant spaces to create an accessible, flexible, and sustainable park. Phase 1, which has been submitted for the Commission's review today, focuses on improvements to the corner of 17th and Constitution Avenue. Phase 2 will be submitted at a later date for the Commission's review. The goal of the Trust for the National Mall and the Park Service is to have the work at 17th and Constitution completed in time for the Park Service's centennial celebration in 2016. So here you can see the site plan for Phase 1. Just to note, the drawing, the north has been rotated, and so it's on your right now. This is Constitution Avenue, and 17th Street is to the bottom of the image. So as part of Phase 1, the lockkeeper's house, which is currently in this location, will be relocated to the southwest. That's primarily for 2 reasons: to incorporate the building into a new entry plaza that will provide new opportunities for interpretation and use. It's also to improve the sight lines at the corner. This intersection is very busy and can get fairly congested, presenting conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians. A new plaza that you see here will be constructed along with low perimeter walls that will frame the entry space and separate it from the surrounding urban context. Phase 1 will also include the construction of a new pathway that you see here that will lead from the new plaza up to the existing plaza that's located at the east end of the lake. The project also includes a new landscaping plan. Also, just to note, the path and some of the landscaping will need to be reconfigured with Phase 2, but the goal is to reuse as much of the material as possible. So this diagram highlights the locations of the lockkeeper's house since it was constructed. It was originally constructed to the south here. It jutted out into 17th Street. In the early 20th century, it was moved to its current location, and as part of the current project, it will be moved again in this location that's highlighted in red. Also, just to note, as part of the project, the previous locations will be marked with inlaid paving in the ground. So along with moving the building, the lockkeeper's house will be rehabilitated according to the Secretary of Interior standards and reopened to the public. The building will be used partially for park management, and the first floor will feature exhibits interpreting the history of the canals in Washington, as well as the lockkeeper's house. And then the basement will be used for storage and mechanical equipment. On the exterior, the stone is in need of cleaning and repair. Many of the cracked stones will be pinned, and the building will be fully repointed. The chimneys will be reconstructed based on historic photographs, and the windows will be replaced to match the glazing pattern from the 1830s. This is a rendering looking south towards the lockkeeper's house once it's been moved, the plaza, and you can see the perimeter wall. You can also see here the inlaid paving that's proposed to mark the current location of the lockkeeper's house. A large willow oak will also be planted in the plaza to provide shade. And then in the background, you can see the understory flowering trees that will also be planted as part of the landscaping plan. This is another view of the project from 17th Street. You can see the lockkeeper's house, the perimeter wall, and then the arcing path in the background. The next few slides take a closer look at the plaza paving plan and perimeter wall. As I noted, the perimeter wall, part of its function is to help frame the space. On the south side, it will be broken into a U shape, and at the center, the mounting block, which was found near the lockkeeper's house, will be put on display. The plaza will be granite, and then the paving of the path will be concrete at the center, and then edged with 2 bands of concrete. And then 2 types of granite are being considered, and they are shown here on the right. This slide just gives you some examples of what the inlaid paving may look like. These are examples in other locations. The perimeter wall is an interpretation of a classic dry stack stone wall. It'll serve 2 purposes: to provide an edge to the garden and also a place for visitors to sit. The material has been selected to complement the lockkeeper's house. And again, the wall will help establish the plaza as a gateway or threshold into Constitution Gardens and separate it from the surrounding memorials on the mall and the urban context. NPS studied a variety of options for signage and has decided to go with the image that you see on the bottom right that incorporates the signage into the stone wall. Moving on to the landscape design and the path that will lead from the new plaza up to the existing plaza at the east end of the lake. Here you can see the tree planting plan. And on one side of the path, there will be a line of overcup oaks and flowering understory trees on either side of that. The trees on the north side of the path will be redbuds, while dogwoods will be planted to the south. Native meadow will replace the turf areas. A number of native grasses will be used as the base for the meadow and will provide seasonal interest. These are drought-tolerant species and will be assessed for their performance on the mall and for future use as part of Phase 2. Accent drifts of flowering perennials and ferns will also be planted in the meadow and provide visual interest and add a new character to this area. Different palettes will be used in the sun and the shade. The idea is to diversify the plant palette, which will improve the ecological function of the park and introduce also a new aesthetic to Constitution Gardens for visual interest throughout the seasons. Staff supports improving the ecological function and introducing native flowering understory trees, the native grasses, as well as the meadow plantings. Staff is recommending that the Commission note the use of the varied planting palette that will provide visual interest and establish a new character for this corner at 17th and Constitution. Staff is also recommending approval of the project as it is consistent with several federal elements, including the preservation and historic features element, the visitors element, and the parks and open space element. Finally, staff is also recommending that the Commission note the importance of improving pollinator health and incorporating relevant guidance that have resulted from the recent presidential memo that promotes the health of honeybees and other pollinators. Several of the plant species incorporated into Phase 1 are pollinator friendly, and staff recognizes the efforts of the Park Service and the Trust to incorporate these plant species and is recommending that as the Park Service and Trust move towards developing plans for Phase 2, they continue to explore ways to prioritize pollinator health. And so with that, it's the Executive Director's recommendation to approve the preliminary and final plans for Phase 1 of the rehabilitation of Constitution Gardens. To note that the use of a varied planting palette will establish a new character at this corner, and to note the importance of improving pollinator health and the recommendations that have resulted from the presidential memo, and also to encourage the Park Service and the Trust to prioritize pollinator health for Phase 2 of the project. That concludes my presentation and available for questions as well as the Park Service and the design team.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Are there questions for Ms. Hirsch or the design team? Mr. Shaw?
I have a question about the levee wall. Is that impacted any way by this design?
It's not impacted by Phase 1 at all.
Nor will it in Phase 2. I mean, the levee is a permanent structure. Everything is going to work around that.
Yes, sir.
I've just got a question with the inlay. It looked like part of it will jut out into the street. How's that going to be maintained? Is that going to be DDOT or Park Service? I mean, if there's ever going to be work done on the road?
Those streets are under the jurisdiction of the Park Service, so we will be maintaining them.
So moved.
It's been, Mr. May, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would just say thank you very much to the staff and to the commission, of course, over time reviewing this, but to the staff for their work with us to try to get through this important approval, which will be part of our centennial celebration when we get the project underway. So appreciate all the efforts they've done to coordinate this and to help us move it along, and we look forward to the development of Phase 2.
Mr. Dixon moved and Ms. White seconded. Sensing no further discussion, all in favor of the EDR, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. One abstention.
I would just like to add, I think that, again, the landscape design is really beautiful and well thought through.
Big improvement.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Agenda item number 4B is the preliminary site and building plans for the perimeter security improvements at the Harry S. Truman Building at the Department of State. Ms. Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. The United States Department of State has submitted for preliminary review the perimeter security improvements at the Harry S. Truman Building. The Hst Building is the headquarters of the Department of State. The project is located in the area of Washington known as the Northwest Rectangle. The site is generally bound by 21st Street to the east, C Street to the south, 23rd Street to the west, D Street, E Street Expressway ramp, and Virginia Avenue to the north. There are several government headquarters and monumental institutions in the area. In close proximity to the site is the GW University campus and the National Mall. Over the last 11 years, the Commission has reviewed projects at the Hst Building or in the immediate vicinity. Back in December 2004, the Commission reviewed the Hst perimeter security improvements, concept design, and more recently, the Department of State gave an information presentation to the Commission in January 2015 to explain the progress that has taken place since 2004. The Hst perimeter security has been coordinated with separate but related projects, such as the United States Diplomacy Center, which you can see here, and also the perimeter security and site improvements at the American Pharmacists Association, so you can see highlighted in the screen. Today, we will focus on the latest proposal, which will replace temporary security measures to enhance the pedestrian character of the site. Here is a closer look at the site. The Hst was constructed in two separate phases, almost 20 years apart. The original portion, referred to as the Marshall Wing, was built in 1941, and a significant L-shaped expansion that wraps around the original building was completed in 1960 and referred to as the New State. The two building components were constructed in two different architectural styles. The Marshall Wing has a stripped classicism style and includes a monumental portico, and the New State follows the principles of the international style with emphasis in horizontality. The Hst Building is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Here are images of existing conditions. The Hst Building has a total of 5 entrances. The C Street entrance, which you can see here at the top, is the ceremonial entrance, and since 2001, the portion of C Street between 23rd, which you can see here, and 21st, has been restricted and controlled by the Department of State. Currently, you can see at the site temporary screening structures for visitors adjacent to each building entrance, as you can see in this picture. Truck inspection facility along the east side of 21st Street, as you can see in this, this image here. And you can see that the vehicle checkpoint lane is separated from the public travel lanes by a series of raised barriers. You can also see the Diplomacy Center under construction in this picture. Here are some more photos at the top where you can see the temporary concrete planter barriers. And moving on to project objectives, as an interagency security committee level 5 facility, the building requires a higher level of protection. Unlike other level 5 facilities, the proposed perimeter security does not restrict pedestrians and bicyclists from using the public space surrounding the building. The project objectives include to secure the building, protect employees and visitors, and improve the streetscape. To achieve these objectives, the applicant established a strategy with 4 components, including building and perimeter security. Replace windows and reinforce walls, extend and reinforce the site perimeter, add security screening pavilions, and relocate the truck inspection station. The project will be implemented in 2 phases. This current submission includes phase 1, which is highlighted in yellow, and consists of a security pavilion along this street, which you can see here, and perimeter security improvements throughout the site. Phase 2, highlighted in blue, includes additional 3 security pavilions, and it will be submitted to the Commission in the future. The project includes a range of streetscape and building elements, from security pavilions to street furniture. As I mentioned, major features of the plan include relocating employee and visitor screening from the interior of the building to new security pavilions at 4 of the building entrances, providing a total of 9 guard booths to control vehicular access, developing a protective barrier system. The protective barrier system is set back 6 feet from the curve line on 21st and 23rd Street to allow for landscape improvements, as you can see here in the image. And along C and D Street, it is set back 2 feet from the curve line to allow for opening car doors. The plan also includes reconfiguring this street to include a truck inspection facility, which is located here, and a pocket park. Also realigning curbs and to address vehicular standoff distances, maintaining the same amount of traffic lanes and direction, and minor changes along 22nd Street, including restriping parking and taxi service areas, and a consistent 10-feet sidewalk throughout the site. Now I will walk you around the site, and as I describe the project in more detail, I will focus on particular topics that reflect the way we analyze the project. While we walk around the block, I will share our comments on the perimeter security improvements based on 4 subjects: landscape, protective barrier system, streetscape, and finally, we will talk about the pocket park. Regarding landscape elements, the project incorporates low-impact development features into the streetscape and includes 3 types of LID opportunities to capture and filter stormwater runoff. Bioretention open areas, which you can see here highlighted in green. Bioretention tree planters, which are highlighted in blue, and cell-type supports for 3-pit soil under sidewalks, which is highlighted in red. The purpose of the landscape is not to hide the security barriers, but to soften them, reduce their height, and create a green edge for pedestrians. A significant amount of low plantings will be combined with the barrier system to enhance the pedestrian walk and streetscape. As you can see in this typical section, Street trees will be planted in the planting areas between the sidewalk and the roadway, as you can see here, and ground covers will be planted along the street sides of barriers. Low shrubs and ground covers will be planted on the sidewalk side of the security elements. And LID strategies will capture roadway runoff through 6-inch curb slots, as you can see in the present images. Overall, we support the landscape design intent to soften the appearance of the security elements and improve the pedestrian experience by replacing large areas of pavement with new street trees, but recommend the applicant to ensure sufficient planting space for proposed and mature trees by evaluating the placement of security elements, foundations within planting areas in an effort to maintain healthy root systems. Now let's walk along 21st Street. The proposal includes realignment of the street to its historic center line. Overall, the tree canopy is consistently maintained, but there is a tree gap in front of the Diplomacy Center, as you can see here, and that is to maintain a visual relationship with the discus thrower, which is this sculpture in the picture. The solid granite walls mark the entrance and incorporate benches along the sidewalk, as you can see here. Here is a section along 21st Street, the Diplomacy Center, and you can see solid granite walls announcing the entrance and incorporating benches. You can also see planting areas and benches in front of the entrance. As you may know, the Diplomacy Center will serve as a museum and educational center. Here is an enlarged plan along 21st Street showing the entrance, and you can see the proposed benches highlighted in red. In general, we support the location of the benches by the Diplomacy Center entrance, but recommend the applicant to consider placing trees in the proposed planting areas on both sides of the entrance to provide shade. Moving on to the protective barrier system. Rather than providing a repetitive row of bollards, the design includes a perimeter security barrier system consisting of freestanding bollards, bollards with rails, with horizontal rails, and stone-clad walls. As you see highlighted in the diagram, the placement of solid walls is minimized to provide visual clues to signify major building entrances and corners. Here you can see a rendering looking south towards the Diplomacy Center along 21st Street. Overall, we are pleased with the Department of State proposal to integrate perimeter security with street furniture, such as benches and light fixtures. The perimeter security barrier system provides variation and rhythm that breaks the monumental building scale and weaves different architectural styles into a cohesive complex. As the project moves forward, we recommend that the applicant further develop the design of the proposed benches, bollards, and railings to ensure a seamless integration of streetscape and security elements. Taking a closer look at C Street, site improvements include curb relocation to the south of C Street to align with the south curve of the adjacent block at the Federal Reserve, barriers consisting of bollards with rails and stone-clad walls extending the length of the proposal vehicular inspection area, so it's only from here to here and also in this area. Retractable bollards at the intersection of 22nd and C Street, and vehicular traffic continues to be restricted while allowing pedestrian access, and shuttle bus pickup drop-off area will be relocated to this street. Here is a section along C Street. Benches will be located on the north side of the sidewalk, and trees will be planted on both sides of C Street. In general, we support the design intent of the placement of the protective barrier system, but encourage the applicant to continue developing the transition of different security and architectural elements and minimize interruption of pedestrian circulation. The transition between the proposed chamfer walls at the corners within the building yard needs careful articulation. The massing of security barriers should complement and enhance the architecture. Therefore, we recommend the applicant to consider the design and integration of the proposed perimeter security elements, particularly at corner conditions, to avoid constricting pedestrian circulation. Another example of where the protective barrier should be refined is at the parking lot loading entry along 21st Street. The bollards located perpendicular to the curbs, which are highlighted in the slide, on both sides of the parking and loading access are not aligned with other security or architectural elements and may cause pedestrians to maneuver between them. Therefore, we recommend that the applicant promote pedestrian flow by aligning bollards consistently with architectural elements to minimize disruption of pedestrian circulation and achieve a graceful transition. Now I'm going to describe the streetscape elements. Overall, we find that the proposal includes streetscape amenities that will improve the neighborhood experience and the identity of the Department of State. The proposal includes benches and bike racks, mostly located next to building entrances and within the pocket park, which is hatched in red. The existing bike share, located at the corner of 21st and Virginia Avenue here, will be relocated further south in this area. It's over here, to open up the sidelines to the discus thrower. With regards to streetscape amenities, we offer the following comments. Provide additional seating to enhance the pedestrian experience, including outside of the joggers' entrance. Moving to 23rd Street, 23rd Street improvements include relocation of the east curve of 23rd Street to align with the curve in the adjacent block south of the site at AFA between C and Constitution Avenue. Here is an enlarged plan of the 23rd Street entrance, and you can see how the security perimeter jogs in this area here to allow for more planting area and respond to the building massing and setback along 23rd Street. The solid granite walls mark the entrance and incorporate benches along the sidewalk. Here are additional street sections along 23rd Street showing the streetscape components. With regards to streetscape amenities, we recommend that the applicant integrate wayfinding and interpretive signage throughout the site to express the agency's diplomatic mission and highlight the history of the building. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the pocket park while we walk along this street. Site improvements along this street include realignment of the intersection of D and 23rd Street here to the north to accommodate a pocket park, construction of a new entrance pavilion on this street, modification of the intersection of D and Virginia Avenue to include a truck inspection station, and realignment of the East Street Expressway ramp to accommodate a secure median with protective fencing. Also, the shuttle bus pickup area will be located adjacent to the pavilion, which is in this area. The goal of the pocket park is to enhance the public realm and provide a gathering space. The pocket park will include seating, bike racks, and planting areas integrated into security elements. Here is a section along this street showing the pocket park with seating and planting areas. We support the pocket park location. The park could become an urban oasis, improve the character of this street, and provide a safe and comfortable pedestrian experience. However, we recommend that the applicant further explore the functional character of the proposed park as a gateway along 23rd Street and consider amenities such as sculptural elements to celebrate the mission of the agency. We also recommend that the applicant explore a more interesting and intimate seating arrangement and consider relocating the proposed bike rack in this area here to make the corner more visible and inviting, and explore an alternative security treatment around the northwest planting area to avoid redundant layers of solid walls that obstruct visibility. As I mentioned, the project includes the relocation of the truck inspection facility to D Street. The Department of State coordinated diligently with DDOT and other government agencies to identify an alternative location for the existing truck inspection area. And here is a section along the truck inspection. As part of this Phase 1 submission, the project includes the design of the security pavilion along D Street. The size of the pavilion is dictated by three main functions. Employee entry, which you can see in these orange arrows. Visitor check-in and screening. Actually, this is visitors, and this is employees, and these are for dignitaries and ceremonial entry. The design of the pavilion and materials palette responds to the current canopy with a linear floating structure and receding columns. The applicant has worked closely with Ncpc staff and other federal and district agencies to fully coordinate the design. In addition, the DC Public Space Committee approved the concept design in June 2014, and the comments have been incorporated into the current design. And with that, is the Executive Director's recommendation for the Commission to approve the preliminary site and building plans for the Harry S. Truman Building. And I will not go over the recommendations since I already explained it. And adopt the Department of State finding of no significant impact for the Hst Building perimeter security improvements. Request a stormwater management plan that addresses compliance with DOEE and Section 438. Notes that the relocation of the truck inspection activities require a transfer of jurisdiction from NPS for the use of Reservation 104, and this transfer of jurisdiction will be submitted to the Commission at a later date. And with this, I conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the Department of State and Design team are here in case you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Questions for Ms. Lee of the design team?
One question about the design. It's hard to tell from the rendering about the color of the stone for the canopy on the D Street Security Pavilion. Is it a are you planning a great deal of contrast? It looks very bright against the limestone. Is that the intent or just the rendering?
Actually, there is no
Identify
stone on the
yourself,
canopy.
please.
What is it?
I'm James
sorry.
Dudney with KCCT Architects, project manager. So it will be clad with stainless steel.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains why it looks so bright.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's in keeping with the material
Right.
finishes of
I
the-
got it. Good, because I thought you were doing some white marble thing, and I was going to jump up and down and object.
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have comments, of course. Wow, you nailed it again. There's only one thing that I would say, that I would also urge, many of the same things that the EDR already addresses very eloquently, and just put a little bit more emphasis on the bollards could be a little more elegant, I think. Maybe a lighter touch. If you've possibly thought about a cable system that could lighten it up a little bit. I'm sure you thought of that, but could you think about it again? Please?
Additional questions, comments? Hearing none, is there a motion on the EDR?
Move. So moved.
It's been moved and Ms. White has seconded. All in favor of the EDR, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. One abstention. Thank you, Ms. Lee, very much.
Thanks.
Moving right along. Agenda item number 4C is the draft master plan for the Marine Barracks at 8th and I Street Southeast. And Mr. Hart is with us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. The Department of the Navy has submitted a draft installation master plan for the Marine Barracks, Washington, which is located in Washington, in southeast Washington. Overall, staff understands the need for this master plan update and is supportive of the overall goal of one of the main parts of this master plan is to relocate a barracks building. There are a few issues that we raised in the recommendations, and we would like for the Navy to address these prior to submitting the final master plan within the next few months. The Marine Barracks, Washington is located in southeast, as I said in the previous slide. The image here shows the Marine Barracks, Washington itself. Get the pointer. And it's comprised of two distinct districts. There's District 1, which is made up of the main post and the Building 20. And then to the south of that is District 2. It is, the two districts are separated by the Southwest-Southeast Freeway, or I-695, and they're located along 8th Street corridor, which is also known as Barracks Row, and this is 8th and I. Most people know of this as 8th and I. The main post has some administrative functions, as well as officer housing, and it is the residence of the Marine Corps Commandant, which is actually right here. The area in main post also has a parade ground. There are frequent performances at the parade ground from the Marine Corps Band that some of you may have visited. District 2, also in District 1 is the Building 20, and this is an enlisted barracks, enlisted Marines barracks. It is a building that was built in the 70s. District 2 is also a barracks. It's known as the Marine Barracks Washington Annex, and it also has a barracks, a parking garage, as well as a recreational field. And that field is actually available for public use as well. This master plan is generally centered around the relocation of Building 20, which you see here in this image. This building does not meet the current anti-terrorism force protection standards, as it is only a few feet away from, you see the freeway here in this image as well. And so the Marines and the Navy understands that this building needs to be, the corridors need to be moved to a different location. So here's some information about the Marine Barracks, Washington itself. It was established in the early 1800s. It is approximately 12.6 acres in size over the two districts. It has a population of 1,286 personnel. And there are 641 staff that are daily commuters. And since there are the 641 commuters, according to the comprehensive plan, there should be no more than 160 spaces for those commuters. And as you see here, there are 150 spaces, which is equivalent to a 1 to 4.27 parking ratio. And this is meets the comprehensive plan goal of one space per 4 employees. Regarding historic resources, this installation is included in the installation is within the L'Enfant Plan boundary. It's located here, this circle. The Marine Barracks, Washington main post was established in 1805 and has been designated a National Historic Landmark. I'll also note that there's the Capitol Hill Historic District that the District 1 is located in, and then there's the Marine Barracks Washington Annex, which is outside of that district. There's also the Washington Navy Yard Historic Landmark as well, which is to the south of M Street. And I'll note that Building 20 was constructed in the 1970s, and the Marine Barracks Washington Annex was established in the early 2000s. These images here are showing the parade grounds for the main post. The black and white photo dates back to 1917, and the other images here are of a more recent vintage. So although the Marine Barracks Washington Annex was built in the early 2000s, you see a picture of it here in this image. This site also includes some historic resources, including the K Street and 6th Street rights-of-way. You see in the based map on the bottom right, K Street is here, 6th Street is here, and as well as National Park Service properties here and here. And we've outlined the annex site for your benefit to understand where this is in this context. I'll also note that in 2001, the Navy entered into a memorandum of agreement for Section 106 purposes with the DC State Historic Preservation Office, the National Park Service, as well to mitigate impacts to historic resources. The MOA included stipulations to preserve the view sheds along K Street and 6th Street rights-of-way by prohibiting buildings to be located there. Because the Navy had made the decision to relocate the barracks from Building 20, it decided to initiate a NEPA process a few years ago. The Navy began to undertake a environmental impact statement process under NEPA. The EIS included exploring the relocation for this facility to one of the 5 alternative locations that you see at this image. They are listed as sites A through E. The table on the slide is a summary of the site alternatives. 2 of the sites are owned and overseen by the Navy. A third site is overseen by the General Services Administration, and it is within the Southeast Federal Center area. And then the other 2 sites are privately owned. The site D and site E are the 2 Navy, the 2 sites that are owned by the Navy, and they're shown here and here. After the release of the draft EIS earlier in this year, the Navy identified Site E as the preferred alternative, and this is a site that was included in the draft installation master plan that's before you today. So this is a plan that the Navy created for future development after deciding the Marine Barracks Washington Annex site was the preferred location for the new barracks. You see the preferred site in the image here, highlighted here, or outlined. It is between an existing parking garage and barracks, existing barracks that are here. The Navy notes that its decision to locate the facility here was based on its proximity to the main post, the ownership, availability, and compatibility with the existing land uses. While this site does have some benefits, the identification of the site is not without its issues, and chief among them are the historic resource impacts as well as land use impacts. And I noted earlier that the annex site had both street rights-of-way and a former National Park Service land. While the site was constructed in the early 2000s, the Navy entered into a covenant with the National Park Service in order for the land to be transferred to the Navy. This covenant required that the Navy maintain the view shed for both K Street and 6th Street, and as well as maintaining a publicly accessible recreation space in perpetuity. And I'll be discussing this in upcoming slides. The Navy also provided a future land use plan, which is shown here. Identified in this slide is the housing, recreation, administrative, and parking areas for the installation in the future. The Navy also provided a green infrastructure opportunities plan shown here, and it has a lot of wording on it. I'll try to summarize it. Basically, it has incorporating a green roof in the new barracks building, harvesting rainwater for irrigation for both the recreation field as well as the parade ground, incorporating pervious surfacing in some of the impervious areas, increase the tree canopy along the streets around this facility, and then the use of more native species in plantings in and around the site. Here's a draft illustrative plan that shows all of the proposed projects in one location. In addition to the relocation of personnel from Building 20, the plan also includes improvements to pedestrian access around the installation, improvements to the parade grounds, as well as improvements to the landscape setting. Well, we reviewed the draft master plan, identifying its consistency with the relevant policies within the preservation and historic features, federal workplace and transportation elements of the comp plan. We found that this master plan was generally consistent with many of the comprehensive plan policies, including those in the federal workplace and transportation elements. However, the draft master plan is not consistent with policies to protect and restore the L'Enfant Street plan and streets, because the main project includes siting the new barracks on a L'Enfant Street right-of-way. We think that that this case does have some unique circumstances, and we'd like for the Navy to conduct some further investigation of locating the new barracks on the L'Enfant Plan Street right-of-way. And I'll be describing this in an upcoming slide. I'd also point out that this is a draft master plan, and it is the Commission's opportunity to be able to give comments on the master plan, and we are requesting the Navy to undertake some additional planning work so the Commission will be able to consider the proposal when it is submitted to the Commission for final review. So we've identified the following for the Navy to address prior to submitting the final master plan. First is about identifying the viewshed impacts for 6th Street and K Street. These streets were listed as viewsheds to be preserved in both the MOA as well as the covenant. Address the potential loss of recreation space, which was a protected element in the land transfer covenant. Both of these issues may require changing the covenant to address this new condition and the impacts that are caused by it. And then finally, understanding the building massing through further consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, the Commission staff, as well as the Commission of Fine Arts and others. So what I'll do for the next few slides is just look at the view sheds along both K Street and 6th Street. The K Street view shed is shown here, and we have the photo on the top right is a view looking east, and this arrow is pointing in the direction of view. So this is the existing barracks, existing parking garage for the annex. The playing field is directly in front of you, and then there's a private development to the left of this. The image on the bottom is a view looking towards the west, and then you can see in these photos, in the aerial photo, the integrity of K Street has, the right-of-way has really been maintained over the years, and we recommend that this continue. We note that the new barracks is being proposed in an area that would stay out of this this view shed. And the photos in the next few slides will show the condition of the 6th Street right-of-way south of 695. So basically the area that's, this is the 6th Street itself, and where 6th Street would be south of 695. So these views are looking north and south from L Street. So L Street is here. And what we see here is a view of the 6th Street right-of-way, which is this kind of open area here. There is a basketball court that's outdoor basketball court here. The existing annex building is, Barracks is on the right-hand side. And on the left is a existing parking garage. And so the building is proposed to be in this space. To the south of this, looking southward along from L Street along the 6th Street right-of-way, is a small one-story brick building, and you'll see it's actually a park area. If you move down to M Street, so this is M Street looking north and south. North, you see the annex building again, the barracks, and behind this tree, there's actually the parking garage, and so the 6th Street right-of-way would be here, and as you can see that there's a little parkland that's there. And then the southern view is actually looking at the Washington Navy Yard. This is the historic boundary wall, and a substation, and there are some actually buildings behind this as well. While the comp plan includes policies to protect and restore the l'enfant plan streets, staff thinks that there are some unique circumstances at this site that really needs to be noted. The portion of 6th Street, which is kind of south of 695, and near this site has really not been constructed. It was an unimproved site, really a paper street. The street does not currently exist between the blocks, from the blocks south of this site. The site will retain or remain in federal ownership, and the southeast-southwest freeway, or I-695, obstructs the viewshed to the north, and then to the south is the Washington Navy Yard, which is also an obstruction. And I'll note that the park that was located here was actually one of the reasons why this roadway wasn't constructed at this location. With regard to recreation, staff finds that the further consultation is necessary to understand the impacts to recreation uses on the annex site, as the Navy's preferred site would likely impact this area. And just for your orientation, this is, of course, the site for the new, the proposed Barracks building. And then this yellow area is actually the area that was supposed to be used for recreational purposes in perpetuity. This may require developing a new covenant with either reorienting the open space on this site or exploring recreation at a nearby location. We recommend that the Navy work with the National Park Service and Ncpc staff to address this prior to submitting the final master plan. The Navy included this drawing of the new barracks building. So this is the existing barracks. This is the parking garage, and then massing for the new barracks building. What it might look like. We think that the Navy should have further discussions with us, the Commission of Fine Arts, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office and others, in understanding what the appropriate massing is for this site, giving its context. This may require additional mitigation through the Section 106 process. And we are requesting that the Navy work with all the consulting parties on this moving forward. And with that, it's the Executive Director's recommendation that the Commission provide the Navy with comments on its draft installation master plan. Note that the Navy and the National Park Service signed a covenant that identified K and 6th Streets rights-of-way as protected viewsheds and designated new recreation space that would be accessible for public use in perpetuity. And that the Navy is proposing to locate a new barracks on a portion of the 6th Street right-of-way included in the covenant. Note that the site for the proposed barracks may encroach on a historic resource, which is 6th Street right-of-way, and the Navy wants to pursue this site. It would need to undertake the following actions before the Commission would consider it. Determine appropriate mitigation with the DC SHPO for impacting the 6th Street right-of-way between the K Street right-of-way and L Street. Develop an agreement or a new covenant with the National Park Service addressing the change in land use from park recreation to mixed-use housing. Identify how to maintain all the existing recreational activities at the site or establish new recreation activities in close proximity to this site. Further recommends that the Navy either make changes to or update the Commission on its progress by submitting responses for the following comments regarding historic preservation. Develop an agreement with the DC State Historic Preservation Office to maintain the K Street right-of-way or viewshed. Meet with consulting parties on the design and configuration of the new barracks building and minimize the massing of the proposed barracks in keeping with the adjacent development. For land use, change the future land use designation of the site of the proposed barracks if this site is retained, and prepare an analysis and recommendations regarding the potential alternative uses for the future of the Building 20. And finally, for transportation, continue to encourage employees working at this site to use alternative means of travel. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and we have a representative from the Navy here to answer questions.
Can you go back to slide 24?
Sure.
Good. Maybe that's the one to ask the question. The covenant encompasses what?
The covenant encompasses, there is a 6th Street right-of-way.
Yeah.
And the K Street right-of-way. It says L, but it's actually K Street right-of-way. And there's a yellow area, which is actually right here, that is supposed to be the new recreation's kind of a reoriented space for it to be used for recreation. And so that area is the area that, so what we're talking about
it's the light yellow.
is the lighter yellow.
Okay,
Is this area in here that's, would be impacted.
okay. Thank you. Questions for Mr. Hart? Mr. May has comments.
A few questions, a few comments. So, does the NCPC actually have a parking standard for residential use?
We do not.
We do not? Is that something that maybe we should consider? I mean, I just throw that out there because the majority of the parking at this campus, at this entire complex, is residential. And, I mean, I don't know, I mean, yeah, they're living where they are working ostensibly, but still, it's something that we probably ought to be thinking about, whether it's appropriate. I mean, I say this simply because there's a massive, ugly parking garage there. And that used to be playground, so. What's immediately to the west of the parking garage there, building 26?
I think it's a recreation center, I think it may be built, the parking garage?
Immediately to the west of that parking garage, I mean, I think it might be district property.
Yeah, it's part of the Carrollsburg development.
It's part of the development?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I mean,
right
the only
here.
thing I've ever known it to be used for was a swing space for a school at one point. They brought in trailers or something like that. I'm just curious about what happens there. What is the current availability of the playing fields to the general public? Because I know that when it was first built, they were not open to the public for several years, and it was a contentious issue in the neighbors. So is it currently available certain hours, certain
My
days?
understanding that it is, I can have the Navy
Please.
to answer, but it's my understanding that it is open for the public at this point and fairly heavily used from.
Hi, my name is Matt Schwartz. I'm a planner with the Navy. Yes, the playing field is available to the public year-round. The public just has to submit their names to the Marines for security clearances, and then the public can go on and use the field.
So is it available at all times?
It
or
is.
just- Okay. So I thought it was part of the reason it was built was for use by the Marine Corps. Did they not use it?
That's correct. The Marines use it too. And
So
so
it's-
whenever the Marines are not using it, the public is allowed to use it at that time. There's blocks of time the public can use it.
Okay. Blocks of time.
A lot of high school teams have football games there in the evening.
Right. Yeah. I've seen various activities there, but for a long time it sat empty. What is the square footage of Building 20 that we're trying to replace?
Currently, Building 20 is around 215,000 square feet, and the new BEQ that we're proposing is 191,000 roughly. That's including the parking requirement. Without the parking, it's about 116,000 square feet.
Was there parking in the 215?
There is. There's 2 floors of underground parking.
It's included in the 215.
Yes.
So do you know how much of the parking is there? How much of that is parking?
Don't have that number offhand, but I can certainly get back to you on that.
But generally speaking, the residential, or the residential square footage is the same or less?
It is going to be, the current BEQ is undersized from the facility's standard.
So you're going to have more,
We're going to have more, the BEQ space is going to increase, but the BEQ complex is not just housing. Going along
Right.
with it is a mess hall, an armory, and a gym, and
Okay.
some office space. So those other uses will actually decrease as long in the BEQ spaces, the housing would increase. But overall net, there would be a decrease in the size of the footprint of the facility.
okay. So now I note there is not a plan at this moment for Building 20, right?
That's correct.
you have your new BEQ, is it possible that that property could be accessed and then be developed? I mean,
That's certainly under consideration, beginning this fiscal year. The Marines, we will be looking into doing a study for the reuse of that facility, and we will be we look forward to working with Ncpc on those study recommendations.
okay. Is it possible that it could simply become a public park or some other public amenity?
As of right now, everything is on the table until we do further analysis.
Okay. There were neighborhood objections to the location of the new BEQ on private property. And I understand the Office of Planning's concerns about losing tax base, but what was the nature of the community objections?
For the draft comments we received for the draft EIS, overwhelmingly the public shared that sentiment that they did not want the BEQ.
Why? I'm asking why.
They wanted it to be on DOD property and not on private parcels precisely for the planned future development at parcels A and B and C. And they didn't want to see a BEQ
So there
there.
are existing plans for those parcels that would be displaced by this?
That's correct. And that's what the community sentiment was, is that they didn't want to see those plans destroyed.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that is not necessarily fully understood at this point in the conversation, or at least I'm not getting a sense, and I'll admit I've not been following this project all the way through, although I know it, I was engaged on and off several years ago. The easements that were put in place here were the result of the loss of the Lincoln Playground, and that was 2 baseball fields. And it seems that the likely outcome of building the BEQ on the site of the current barracks in the annex would result in the loss of a baseball diamond. Isn't that right?
Right now, the configuration for where the 6th Street right-of-way is, there's a basketball court there.
Yeah.
That basketball court would have to be relocated, and we feel there is enough space to relocate it on that current site. The baseball diamond that you're speaking of, that's on the corner by K Street, there might be a slight impact to the diamond there, but overall, most of the existing playing space would be maintained.
So the way I look at it, based on the aerial photos that I've seen, that dark black outline completely consumes the baseball diamond. So you're telling me that it actually would somehow fit?
Yes, as of right now, we're pretty confident that everything that's existing there on those playing fields would remain the same, that there would not be any impact. We're only looking at foreseeably just the basketball courts would have the impact, and that would have to be relocated.
Okay, so I just want to say that at this point, the Park Service is very concerned about the proposed location of the BEQ in terms of what it affects and what was negotiated probably 15 years ago, or whatever it was. That's not to say that we could never agree to this. It just means that we're very concerned about it, and I think that we want to make sure that all of the concerns that we had before are being adequately addressed. I mean, this was a pretty massive undertaking and a pretty massive reorganization of public park space, and it resulted, at least for a few years, of a complete loss of that park space for public use. Now, much of that, I guess, has been restored. I'm not sure if it's better than it was before. It's kind of hard to believe that it actually is, except that it's a turf field instead of being worn-out grass. But then again, it was a district park, and it's the sort of thing that probably would have become a turf field before too long. I'm also concerned about the mere notion of putting something else into a L'Enfant Street. Now, I understand that this is not the most pristine L'Enfant Street, but, wherever we can, we seem to try to push buildings out of rights-of-way that were original L'Enfant rights-of-way, and simply because we have a freeway to the north and a one-story brick building to the south, is that enough justification? Because, everybody has been talking for years about that freeway eventually going away or being buried or something like that. That may eventually happen, in which case we will have put some other obstruction into 6th Street, and we're going to have to wait another 40 or 50 years to get rid of this. So I have strong concerns about that, and I think this commission should be concerned about that. So I think just to conclude, we were certainly ready to discuss it. I know that we have a meeting planned next week where we'll be discussing this in greater detail. But it's quite possible that we will not be able to come to agreement on this, and we may push to look at alternate sites. I do want to understand one thing about the Navy Yard site, which is that the primary or the only reason that I saw that was cited for not locating the barracks in that location was because it was not a good fit with the administrative uses of the Navy Yard. Is that a deal killer for some reason? Or does it simply mean that, because
There's several reasons, and I just want to maybe take a step back to just provide some background context of how we ended up at the annex as the preferred site. So starting with the Marine Barracks Washington's mission. They provide presidential support duties, infantry training, ceremonial support, and they provide funeral support at Arlington National Ceremony. And many new Marines coming out of high school come to Marine Barracks Washington to start, some of them, and they're being prepared to learn the operational forces. So it's very important for them to have unit cohesion and supervision. And for the EIS siting criteria that we used for all the sites, actually take a step back. Beginning in 2010, the Marine Corps instituted what we called a Community Integrated Master Plan, known as the CIMP, the CIMP. And for about nearly close to 3 years, there were community workshops held and meetings, and it really was a really good process to find. The community came up with potential site solutions for this problem to relocate this new BEQ. And as Carlton mentioned earlier, the existing BEQ, it's roughly a little over 10 feet away from Interstate 695.
I don't want to interrupt, you have a long speech on this, but I really was just asking a simple question, why the Navy Yard site was being rolled out. I understand all that. I appreciate that. I know that this has been a careful process and a thoughtful process, and it's been going on for a long time. I know that there are neighborhood concerns about the other sites. All of this stuff is understood and understandable. I just want to know, why is the Navy Yard not the top spot? Does it just have to do with the fact that it's remote by a block from the rest of the barracks? Is that the principal concern?
The main concern is that the Washington Navy Yard Master Plan does not have a BEQ or that type of use in the long-term vision for that area of the installation. It is an incompatible use. Another reason is that although the site is within the 2,000 feet walking radius, which we deemed as a reasonable walking distance to 8th and I, it is the farthest out of all the sites. The annex is closer. So from an operational standpoint, the Marine Barracks Washington mission, having the BEQ at the annex site is more efficient due to its co-location nature. And as well, the potential site at that Navy Yard site could potentially close street as well.
It's a little different. It's behind a wall, but okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw?
I just wanted to be mindful, this is actually one of the fastest growing areas of the district, and every picture I've seen is looking inward at the block. And I think the comments that came from the public and from Office of Planning was that Barracks Row has transformed into a vibrant place full of restaurants, and we were really concerned about, for a long time, federal installations were catalysts for development but can also inhibit development. But as for all the sites that are considered, we're actually very happy you picked the annex site. That's one that the sites we identified in our comments. But just be aware that when you look up that street, even on the view sheds, those are all construction sites. There's so many units being proposed for there, and so we don't want to have an island, or we need to figure out some way to integrate it or find some ways to connect within a community, because it is being fully built out right now, and we expect it to become some thriving neighborhoods within the district. So let's figure out some ways to make sure it's better integrated into the development pattern we're seeing in the districts.
Additional questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion on the EDR? There's an enthusiastic motion on the EDR. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the EDR, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. 2 abstentions. Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5A is an information presentation on amendments to, wait a minute, I skipped one, I'm sorry. Caught myself. Agenda item number 4D
No, right here.
is the authorization to release the draft federal elements of the comprehensive plan for a 60-day public comment period.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm here to present the federal elements of the Comprehensive Plan for the National Capital, also known as the Comp Plan. The Comp Plan is a document that guides the planning and development in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding region. It's comprised of 2 parts, the federal elements prepared by the Ncpc and the district elements prepared by the D.C. Office of Planning. The district elements addresses traditional city planning issues such as land use, housing, and economic development, while the federal elements provide a policy framework for the federal government in managing its operations and activities in the National Capital Region. Together, the federal and district elements enhance Washington as a great national capital and balance both the federal and local interest with a shared responsibility for the natural, cultural, economic, and social environments. The Comp Plan consists of 8 federal elements. This is the first time that the Commission is seeing all of the federal elements together with graphics and also in this new layout. Since 2010, Ncpc staff has been bringing individual elements forward to the Commission as an overall effort to update the federal elements. Each element has been reviewed by the Commission at draft and final stages. All draft policies have previously been released to the public, and all final policies have been adopted by the Commission, currently held in abeyance until final federal elements are adopted. Please note that the Parks and Open Space element is not included in this update. As announced in your July 2015 Executive Director's Report, the National Park Service and Ncpc are currently conducting a small park study. The study will evaluate the inventory of approximately 300 plus national park sites and inform the future use, the management, and the operational decisions concerning small parks in Washington. This study will also identify candidate sites for new museums and memorials and inform policy updates to the Parks and Open Space element. Following the completion of this study, Ncpc will update and submit to the Commission this element as a separate amendment. The 2004 Parks and Open Space element policies will remain in effect until updated. There are 3 big changes since the Commission last adopted the final policies in this draft update. First is the visitors and commemoration element. This includes a policy revision to address changes to congressional law regarding donor recognition. The second is the federal environment element. This includes new policy guidance with new executive orders that were issued regarding climate change, flooding, and sustainability. And also included in your package is an action plan matrix, which contains specific projects to set the necessary steps to activate the goals and policies found in the federal elements. Many of the projects that were identified are carried over from the 2004 Comp Plan, and many of the action items identified in the new urban design element. In the next couple of slides, I will provide an overview of each element included in this update. The urban design element. This is new to the comp plan. It includes new materials derived from the technical work completed by the Height Master Plan study. It reaffirmed the importance of the Height Act as well as the form and character of the nation's capital. The urban design element includes a new view shed section and technical addendum, and also includes policies that aim to protect the views and vistas that are integral to the national capital's image. The federal workplace is evolving and moving towards a more mobile work environment in response to interrelated goals regarding operation efficiency, fiscal responsibility, and environmental stewardship. As seen in GSA's Total Workplace Initiative, the workplace mobility trends are driving changes to employee space requirements, leasing policies, and also building design. Policies in the federal workplace element continue to support locating, developing, and managing the federal workplace in a manner that enhances the efficiency and productivity, and also the value and public image of the federal government. The foreign missions and international organizations element provide a policy framework to plan a secure and welcoming environment for diplomatic activities and international activities in Washington. One key challenge is balancing the need to plan secure location for chanceries while being sensitive to residential neighborhoods. This element includes policies that give priority consideration for the location of chanceries in the matter of right areas, as well as proposed foreign mission centers. These are areas compatible for chancery use. The transportation element provides a policy framework to develop and maintain a multimodal transportation system that meets the travel demands for the workers, the residents, and visitors. Policies in this element encourage improved regional mobility and air quality through expanded transportation alternatives and transit-oriented development. Bless you. The federal environment element identifies planning policies related to the maintenance, protection, and enhancement of the region's natural environment. Since the Commission last approved the policies back in 2012, 3 new executive orders regarding climate change, flooding, and sustainability were issued. The element now includes some new policy guidance regarding climate adaptation, with additional measures to mitigate climate change through the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, renewable energy, alternative modes of transportation, and implementation of other technologies and sustainable measures. The historic preservation element sets forth policies to protect historic resources of national and federal interest within the National Capital Region. Washington's unique character rests on the foundation of its historic planning, most notably the plan of the City of Washington, which consists of both the L'Enfant Plan and the McMillan Plan, which is a primary focus for this element. And then the visitors and commemoration. This sets forth policies for visitors' destination that include federal and cultural institutions, attractions including memorials, monuments, and national landmarks, as well as spaces for national events and public gatherings. In 2012, Ncpc completed the Memorial Trends and Practice in Washington, which provided guidance on policy and planning decisions associated with memorial development. The study included a publicly accessible catalog and online mapping of existing memorials in Washington. Since this is the first opportunity to review a full draft of the federal elements, staff would like to release the document for a 60-day public comment period. The federal elements will be available online at ncpc.com/complan. And after the public comment period, staff will revise as necessary depending on the public comments and bring the federal elements back to the Commission for final adoption. It is the Executive Director's recommendation that the Commission authorize the release of the draft federal elements of the Comprehensive Plan for the National Capital for a 60-day public comment period. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. A lot of work has gone into this. Questions?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a few comments and then maybe a question. First of all, I'll give you my historical note. It was one of my responsibilities as chairman of the Government Operations Committee in 1975 to develop the first comprehensive plan for the city. It was very different from this, I can tell you. Not that we didn't do a good job, but this is spectacular, a lot of work, and I watched it evolve over time. So I want to commend the staff and everyone for doing it. I want you to know I've read every page and every word. Not quite, but good job. And I'm still working on it. I'm a slow reader. And I hope the public will get a chance. I had a comment, discussion with the planning director for DC to ask him whether he was comfortable that DC was engaged in this enough to be felt in the plan. So we don't want to lose our home rule, but we want to make sure we engage and work with it. And I feel we have and are. So that makes me happy. I'm also interested at some point in having more of visibility in the plan east of the river. As you say, Mr. Chairman, I have no shame, right, about east of the river. And so I don't know, I mean, we don't want you to come over too much, but there's a lot of federal stuff over there east of the river that I would think would have some need to have it coordinated with what we do in our community with the Homeland Security, with a lot of other things that are coming. So having said those things, I would, as I usually do out of order, move that we adopt it, and maybe there'll be further discussion if I get a second.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Shaw.
I echo all those concerns and just want to thank once again that on page number 2, the shared stewardship took a lot of work between our two respective staffs, but really just shows an integration. You know, I think us as a local planning office realize we have federal significance and play a very big role in this country, but it's also great on the Ncpc side to really understand it's about residents and about livability and about how people can really live and not just work in the space. And so I just really want to compliment you on this and really thank you for reaching out to us on creating that shared stewardship statement. So as we said, we'll put on the record, that's going to be on the front page of our district comprehensive plan as well, just to show that we're working hand in hand on these planning efforts.
Thank you.
Mr. May? Nope. Further comments? It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Dixon and Mr. May, respectively. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the EDR? Say aye. Opposed, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, agenda item 5A is the last item of the day. It's an information presentation on amendments to the 1974 Pennsylvania Avenue Plan for squares 378 and 379. Mr. Walton, welcome.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Today, staff is giving an information presentation on an internal project. This is an update to the 1974 Pennsylvania Avenue Development Corporation's Pennsylvania Avenue Plan, sometime called the PADC Plan. The plan amendment is in response to the plan amendment is in response to GSA's FBI site disposal and consolidation project, a portion of which is located just across the street on the existing FBI headquarters site. The FBI is consolidating several facilities onto one site at one of 3 potential locations outside of the city. The plan amendment will be the first step in a process leading to a set of square guidelines that should help shape future development on the existing FBI site. So as I mentioned, the site is located just across the street within the PADC boundary, which is shown here in the red line, right at the center, between 9th Street on the east and 10th Street on the west, Pennsylvania Avenue to the south, and East Street to the north. I want to start with a little background on the PADC itself. So the PADC was created in order to make a neighborhood out of what existed along Pennsylvania Avenue in the late 1960s and early 1970s. As you can see, development was somewhat random, both in scale and in use at that time. The neighborhood would bridge between the federal areas and the National Mall, south of Pennsylvania Avenue, and the commercial areas and more residential areas to the north of Pennsylvania Avenue. The plan had a goal of creating an active street life with commercial and cultural activities while at the same time serving as a ceremonial main street for civic activity. The PADC plan was created just after the development of the existing FBI headquarters building. So you can see the FBI at the Hoover building here near the end of construction with a little bit of the previous context here. So you can see how much things have changed since the establishment of the PADC. The PADC is broken up into 3 guiding documents. There's the Pennsylvania Avenue Plan, which is pictured here, which provides a conceptual planning and redevelopment framework. There's square guidelines, which give more specific detailed guidance for each individual square. And it can include things like the development envelope or setbacks, curb cuts, loading locations. It's more similar to zoning or schematic planning in its level of detail. And then there's general guidelines, which are high-level planning principles that provide a uniform standard of development for the entire PADC. So because the building was created prior to the plan, the site is described as having only a federal use in the existing plan. It says solely for the FBI offices. This site will be transferred to a private developer based on GSA's intent for the consolidation, and it's that change in use that requires the need for a plan amendment. So just for clarity's sake, I just want to let everyone know what we're really amending here is just this text, the text on page 37 of the existing Pennsylvania Avenue plan that describes squares 378 and 379 in the FBI building. So then why is the plan amendment important? All development proposals within the PADC boundary are reviewed against the plan. It's also at the prime location at the center of a corridor between the Capitol and the White House. It's a part of a comprehensive and unified streetscape design. Any redevelopment that occurs on the site has the potential to reinvigorate Pennsylvania Avenue and East Street. So the 2 major issues that we want to inform you about in this presentation. The first is the delegated authorities of Ncpc, GSA, and the Park Service after the sunset of the PADC in 1996. And the second is the strategy staff is taking to develop the plan amendment moving forward. So in 1996, Public Law 104-134 dissolved the PADC and transferred their authorities to Ncpc, GSA, and the Park Service. Ncpc and GSA were given the responsibility to ensure that any redevelopment occurred consistently with the PADC plan. An authority to amend the plan was given solely to GSA. Later in 1996, GSA, Ncpc, and the Park Service signed an MOA specifying the process for reviewing redevelopment proposals and for amending the plan, which is what we're in the process of doing now, in square guidelines, which we plan on doing down the road in the near future. So this matrix outlines the responsibilities and levels of authority for each of the agencies under the federal law and under the 1996 MOU. As you can see from the large stars here, that GSA has the bulk of the authority. Only GSA can amend the plan or amend the square guidelines. Ncpc can propose amendments to this, and the Park Service can propose amendments to the plan. Ncpc can propose amendments to the square guidelines, but those proposals have to be transmitted to GSA for acceptance. So how will the plan be amended? Under Section 5 of the 1996 MOA, it gives Ncpc an advisory role to propose a plan and square guideline amendments to GSA for approval. Ncpc is leading this effort as the central planning agency for the federal government who considers both federal and local interest. So staff has been working with several agencies over the summer to develop a plan amendment. We've been working with the Park Service and GSA and CFA, but as well we've been working with local agencies, the SHPO, the Office of Planning, DDOT, and some community stakeholders. The Commission should be receiving our plan amendment at the December meeting for review and approval. Hopefully, we'll get it to you in December. Once accepted, Ncpc will transmit that plan amendment to GSA, and GSA will submit the plan amendment to a congressional committee for a 60-day review. So the next steps in a general schedule. So we're in the process of giving this information presentation now. As I just mentioned, we will be coming to the Commission, we hope in December, with the plan amendment for review and acceptance, and then we will transmit that to GSA. GSA will work through the spring to fulfill its NEPA responsibilities. Following that, GSA will submit the plan amendment to the Congressional Committee for a 60-day review. And so the congressional committees will either review and approve or disapprove. If we get no action, we will consider that an approval, and we'll move forward to developing square guidelines, which we anticipate bringing to the Commission at the December or January 2016-2017 Commission meeting for review and acceptance. Once that's accepted, we can transmit the square guidelines to GSA for incorporation into the 1974 Pennsylvania Avenue Plan. So with that, that concludes my presentation, unless we have any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Walton or others? All right. We've only just begun.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walton. If there's no other business to come before us, and hearing none, thank you. We are adjourned.